Welcome to Travel Italia, the show about travel in Italy. Ciao everyone, welcome to Travel Italia, the podcast all about travel planning for Italy. Today's show is part 3 of my series on Lake Como. Part 1 was about general info about the lake and some of its history. Part 2 was about which months are best to travel to the lake, how to get there, and once you're there, how to get around the lake. So if you missed those episodes, go back and have a listen. You'll find some really useful stuff. Today's episode is about what there is to see and do at Lake Como. I can't claim that this is an exhaustive list because there's just too much to do and see at the lake. But I do hope to give you a taste of what's available and also give you some resources to help you plan your trip. So let's get started. As I mentioned in previous episodes about Lake Como, the lake is unique because of its dramatic, steep mountains that surround it. One of the main reasons people come here is not for fishing or water sports, but because of the lake's incredible beauty and history. It's really, believe me, like no other place on earth. This is where dramatic natural beauty meets historic architectural beauty. So naturally, one of the top activities at the lake is touring its many historical villas. There are a lot of them, and unfortunately, I don't have time to tell you about all of them. So I'm going to tell you about my top 3 favorites, which also happen to be in the top 10 most popular villas. Okay, so first off, we have Villa Carlotta. Okay, Villa Carlotta is located on the west fork of the lake in that center area that I've mentioned before, which is basically the most popular area of the lake. It's called the Larian Triangle. So it is in that area. This is a 17th century villa surrounded by an enormous botanical garden that is beautiful, full of ancient trees, all kinds of flowering plants, and has an amazing view of the lake. This villa is also famous for its art collection. It has some notable Italian and German artists' paintings on display. It's in the town of Tremezzo, like I said, on the western side of the lake. And you can get there by car, bus, or ferry. You can take the ferry to Tremezzo, and the villa is only a short walk up the road. Not bad at all. Entry price is €15 a head. And in the show notes, I'll put the official link to the villa where you buy tickets. So you can buy them in advance and that you can see all the discounts that are offered because there are some discounts available. Now, this is one of the most popular villas on the lake, so it pays to plan in advance. When you buy your ticket, you're scheduling and picking a date. So if you're going in the high season in the summer or anytime really, I would just do it in advance just to avoid disappointment or long lines. Okay, next up on the villa tour is Villa Monastero in Varenna. So this villa is a converted 12th century monastery, hence the name Monastero. And it has a winding terraced botanical garden that goes from the villa down to the lake. And I'll tell you, this is breathtaking, not just because of the garden. The garden in and of itself is stunning. The views here in this villa are really unique, just because of the position of the villa. It's my favorite garden on the lake, I have to tell you the truth. It's probably not the most well known, but it's my personal favorite. The villa's not very big, but it's definitely worth a visit. And this is, like I said, a converted monastery, and so it has a villa that you can visit. It also has a conference center on the grounds, and this conference center hosts very important and prestigious European conferences. Now, the star of the villa, like I said, is the garden. It is really, I hate to use this word, but one of the most Instagrammable places on the lake. You know, when you go on social media and you see photos of Lake Como, in the feed, you'll probably get lots and lots of photos from this particular garden. Now, like I said, it's located in the lovely town of Varena, which is also, well, I would say it is my favorite on the lake. And this is on the eastern fork of the lake. You can get there by car or bus, but you can also take the ferry, of course. And because the eastern fork of the lake has the train route, if you remember, I mentioned that the train goes all the way up the lake on the eastern fork. So you can actually take a train here, and then the villa is like a 10-15 minute walk from the train station. It's not bad at all. There are different pricing options for this villa, so you can buy a ticket to only see the gardens, and that's just €10. You can buy a ticket to see the gardens and the villa, and that's €13. And right next door to this villa is another villa that's been converted into a hotel, and that's Villa Cipresi, which also has a beautiful garden that you can visit. And so you can buy a combined ticket for both villas. And I wasn't able to find the price, but I want to say it's around €16 or so. Now, I have to tell you, it is a lovely, lovely way to spend an afternoon or a day. But if you do happen to go to this villa, my suggestion is to end your visit with an aperitivo, a drink on the terrace of Villa Cipresi, because it has, again, I mean, I hate to keep saying the same word, stunning, amazing, but really, it is just a beautiful spot to enjoy a drink. If you're there at sunset, it's just really magical. Now, for Villa Monastero, Villa Ciprese, right next door, you don't need to buy your tickets in advance. You can just buy them at the entrance. They don't usually have enormous crowds. Okay, the third and final villa I want to share with you is Villa Balbianello. And this is located on the western fork of the lake in the town of Tremezzina. I think one of the factors that makes this villa really unique is its location. It's on this little peninsula so it's surrounded on three sides, surrounded by water. And the villa has just a really manicured English style garden, and it's terraced. It overlooks the lake again with spectacular, just jaw dropping views. This villa dates back to the 18th century, and it's had a lot of famous owners, from its original owner, who was a Roman Catholic cardinal, to an American general in the 20th century. So it now belongs to an Italian national foundation that preserves historical buildings. And the villa, it's not huge. All of these villas, I want to let you know, are not huge. They're what they were used for were personal summer residences, so they're a summer home. It's just the location and the beauty of the architecture that makes it just somewhere you want to visit. And for those of you who are film buffs, you have seen this villa, or at least its gardens, in a couple of movies. This is where a scene from Star Wars Attack of the Clones, when Anakin and Padme kiss in the garden overlooking the lake, it's actually the gardens of Villa Balbianello. And another scene from one of my very favorite movies, Casino Royale, a scene at the end of the movie when Bond is recovering from his many injuries and he's sitting in a beautiful garden, and that is Villa Balbaniello. It's really a famous villa. Getting to Villa Balbaniello takes a little more work because it isn't accessible directly by car. There is a parking lot behind the expansive grounds. The grounds are enormous, so you'll have to, if you're driving, you'll have to park quite a ways away and then walk uphill for about 10 minutes. So you definitely want to bring your walking shoes. You can take a ferry to the town of Leno, which is right next to the villa. Then you have a fairly long walk. If you walk from the ferry landing to the villa, that's about a 25-minute walk, and like I said, some of it's uphill. Or if you arrive at Leno by ferry, you can take another little boat from Leno to the dock of the villa. I think this is the most stylish way to arrive. You can pretend you're Bond. The cost of this little round trip taxi boat ride is €8, so it's pretty reasonable if you want to just not overexert yourself. Now, the cost of visiting only the garden is €13, and the cost of visiting the villa and the garden is €23. But it's not a self-tour. You have to schedule a guided tour through this villa. And it's available, I think they do it both in English and Italian. So you need to book your tickets in advance. So again, don't wait to the last minute because you may be just deeply disappointed that there are no tickets. Tickets are limited and they do sell out weeks and sometimes months in advance. So again, for all these villas, I'll be adding the official websites that you can navigate in English by clicking on the drop-down menu on the top right-hand corner and buy your tickets, schedule your visits well in advance. If visiting villas is at the top of your list, I do recommend going to the lake in the spring, which is, of course, the best time to see all the lovely gardens in their full splendor when they're blooming. Okay, so those are my top 3 villas at Lake Como. Like I said, there are tons of other villas, most of them smaller villas. Some of them are private hotels, some of them are visitable, some of them you can just admire as you're cruising along the lake. So what else is there to do, you ask? Well, as I mentioned in the last episode, I highly recommend, if you're going to Lake Como, you must take a boat ride or a tour of the lake at some point. There's a lot of options and all kinds of experiences. Everything from just renting a kayak or stand-up paddleboard to a limousine boat tour. The choices are endless, really. There's lots of tours available. You can take a simple 1-hour boat ride tour around the lake, and that runs, about €200 to €220 for the hour. Or something like an all-day boat tour. They also have dinner tours. There's even a karaoke tour. There's an all-day villa tour where you can take, where you're taken to see all the most beautiful villas along the lake. And then you might even get to drive by George Clooney's villa. But by the way, George Clooney's villa is located in the town of Lallio, if you want to make a pilgrimage there. But I don't really recommend it because all you can see are the gates. These tours range, like I said, from very simple to very elaborate. So we're talking anything from a couple €100 to thousands of euros. And the options are endless. So I can't give you all the details, but what I can do is recommend two companies. I have no, no connection with these companies other than I know that they're reputable. So in the show notes, I'll add two links to different boat companies. One is is more on the low end. One is more luxury classic boat tours, just to give you an idea. So, if you're staying at a hotel that offers concierge services, they may be able to arrange something like that for you. But many of these hotels around the lake are very small and don't have a whole lot of services. So keep that in mind. All right, if you are on a budget and maybe can't afford to spend hundreds or thousands of euros on a boat tour, then what I suggest is setting aside a day to go town hopping using the public ferry system that I've talked about, the public ferry system in the previous episode. It's not as exciting as a private boat tour or a limousine boat tour, but it's a great affordable option. In the last episode, I covered the details, and so you want to go back and listen to that episode because you'll get some really time-saving information. So do go back and listen to that. It is really a fun way to spend the day because what you can do is buy a ticket that allows you to get on and off wherever you want on the lake. So you can start on one side of the lake and just jump off wherever you feel like it. Spend an hour or two walking around the towns, and at the most it's going to cost you €28 per person for a 24-hour period. And I say at the most because it's kind of a weird ticket. You choose how far, how many zones on the lake you want to travel. But if you want to travel all of the lake, it's €28 tops. So it's really a great deal, very affordable. Now there's so many towns to choose from, and like I've said in the past, that area in the center of the lake, the Larian Triangle, it's called. That just seems to be the most popular place to be. It's really like a party atmosphere in the summertime. I'm talking about the towns of Bellagio, Varenna, Tremezzo, Menaggio, that area. But there's a lot of other towns that are smaller, don't have as much of a reputation, that are really worth visiting. So towns like Cernobbio on the West Fork, or Nesso on the east. No, it's also on the West Fork, but on the east side of the Western Fork. So you can hardly go wrong as far as just getting off a stop, exploring, and waiting till the next ferry comes along. It's a fun way to spend the day. Each town has its own character, its own churches, its own architecture, and it's really an amazing thing to do for the day. Okay, so far we've talked about villas, boat tours, and town hopping by ferry. What if you just want to lie in the sun, read a book, and sip on a spritz? Well, if you just want to relax by the water, you can do that at a Lido. What is a Lido, you ask? Well, it's a waterfront area where you can rent an umbrella and a lounge chair for the day. There's typically a cafe at Lido's that offer drinks and simple meals and sandwiches. It's really a relaxing way to spend the day. You can go for a swim. Some Lidos have both access to the lake and a swimming pool, so that's nice. And during the summertime, you should reserve a spot if you want to spend the day at a Lido because they're very, very popular and all the spots may be taken if you don't reserve in advance. So, what I'm going to do is in the show notes, I'll put a link to a map that shows every Lido along the lake. Okay. Now, prices range from 10 euros a day and up. Some of the more exclusive Lidos are a bit pricey. And on that map, it will also show you public beaches at the lake. Now, there are some public beaches as well, but keep in mind that Lake Como is surrounded by steep mountains, so these are not wide sandy beaches. They're very small pebble beaches, and some of them are steep. Okay, and I do have to give you a word of warning about swimming in the lake because Como is a deep glacial lake, so the water is frigid. In the summertime it's nice, but it's very deep, and because it's so deep, there are dangerous undercurrents in the lake that can pull you down. And so I hate to scare anyone, but I feel like I'm not doing my duty if I don't warn you that people die at this lake every year because they underestimate the temperature of the water and they don't know about these dangerous currents. So only swim in marked areas. There are no lifeguards. So you're on your own and stay close to the shore. Okay, so on to the next activity that I have on my list for you, and that is spending some time in the city of Como. Now, remember that the city of Como is the biggest city on the lake, and it's at the very bottom of the Western Fork. It's a beautiful historical city, at least the historical city center is. I mean, it is a functioning city with big city problems, so it's not a perfect place. But the historical city center is still surrounded by the walls that were originally put there by the Romans. So it really has a lot of charm, and it has a beautiful cathedral and other just beautiful little churches that are worth visiting. It also has a lot of fun shopping and restaurants. So it's a fun way to spend the day, seeing the city, shopping, having lunch. It's an enjoyable thing to do. If you are in Como and spending the day there, a fun way to end the day is to take the funicular. So, if you are standing in front of the lake in the city of Como, and you're looking out on the lake, to the right, up on the hill, is the town of Brunate. And it's just a little hilltop town. If you follow the lake around, you'll see there's a funicular that goes up there. So you can take the funicular up there, grab a glass of wine, enjoy the view, and maybe have something to eat, and then take the funicular back down. So you can have an aperitivo at one of the cafes up there, enjoy the views, especially at sunset. It's really glorious. All right, let's continue on our list. Since the lake is surrounded by mountains, there's obviously lots of hiking trails for hiking enthusiasts. So On TripAdvisor, for example, there are some hiking tours available. Road biking is very popular around the lake. So if you're into road biking, this is paradise for you. But beware, and I'm sure if you're a serious road biker, you know this already, but the roads are very narrow and there are no bike lanes. So if you're not into road biking, it's not exactly a relaxing bike ride because you're sharing these tiny roads with cars and trucks and buses. So keep that in mind. Also, on TripAdvisor, you can find all kinds of tours. There are food tours, um, even biking tours, all kinds of stuff. So, like I said, I'll add links for you if you're interested in that kind of thing. Food tours, you know, I don't know. I'm not one for food tours, but I get the appeal of just having someone take you from restaurant to gelato shop to grab a drink. Someone who knows the ropes. I understand that. But to be honest, the food tours that I see happening around Lake Como, they are not giving you a taste of the local cuisine. They're giving you food that is known internationally to be Italian food. But the problem is that here in Italy, every region has its own local food. We don't just have Italian food. Lake Como has its own specialties, and on these food tours, I haven't seen one yet that will take you to, have risotto with lake fish in it. That's the most famous dish in and around the lake. And they like to eat eels, so you're not going to see that on a food tour. So yeah, I mean they're fun, but if you want an authentic experience, I can't recommend it. Okay, so there's also a few interesting places I want to point out. On the East Fork of the lake, above the lovely town of Arena, is a small 11th century castle and that's open to be visited. It has amazing views of the lake. It's called Castello di Vezio, and it's about a half-hour hike from the town of Arena. I think you can get there by car as well. If you pop into the tourist office of Varena, they're very, very helpful there. They'll give you a map, and so you can find your way up there. And on the weekends, they also do incredible falconry demonstrations. So if you're traveling with kids, this is really fun. I'll put the link in the show notes. There is a small charge. It's a few, I think, like €5. Very small charge. The other place worth noting is the Orrido of Bellano. So this is also located on the east fork of the lake, just outside the town of Bellano. And what this is a canyon that has been cut by millions of years of glacier water coming down from the Alps to making its way to the lake. So it's an incredible canyon that still has glacier water flowing through it. And what the town has done is that they've built a series of walkways through the canyon. So you can walk through the canyon and then they light up the canyon and you can see the water coming through. It's a nice thing to do, especially on a hot summer day. It's a refreshing place to be. It costs €6 to enter, and I'll also put that link in the show notes. Now, if you are spending a lot of time at Lake Como, one thing to consider is maybe doing a day trip into Switzerland, or you can tack this on the front or the back end of your trip. because a lot of people don't realize that, Lake Como is on the Swiss border. And just on the other side of the mountains, and we're talking very few kilometers, there's another beautiful glacial lake just across the Swiss border. And that lake is called Lake Lugano. And it's very easily reached from the city of Como to Lugano. You can be there in 35 minutes by train. The train ride only costs €22 round trip. It's a nice way to see a little bit of Switzerland and this lovely lake. Well, we've talked about villas, boat tours, lidos, town hopping, the town of Como, hiking and biking, Castello di Vezio, Orrido di Bellano, and hopping the border over to Lake Lugano in Switzerland. And really, I've only scratched the surface of what there is to see and do. But I do hope that this has been helpful as you're thinking and planning your trip to beautiful Lake Como. Remember to check out the show notes for all those links that I mentioned. There's going to be a lot of them in this episode. And if it has been helpful, please subscribe and share this with your travel buddies. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a buon viaggio. Ciao.